So, I guess, I don't know. Where do I even begin? Like, how do I even start a video like this? I mean, I guess, okay, so, my channel, yeah. My channel is, the way I portray myself, at least what I try to portray myself, I'm not a financial guru. I am not an expert in the stock market. I'm not trying to be the next Jeremy. Point of my and this is going somewhere, I promise you. This is going somewhere. The point of my channel, the whole point, is to chronicle my journey through the stock market. And, you know, to share what I've learned along the way, and, you know, to chronicle my successes and my mistakes. Hyliion may be the latter, and I you know, this video might be me starting to admit that. I had some expectations. By the way, I sold most of my Hyliion shares. More on that later, but yeah, we'll get into that later. I had some expectations I released on Hyliion a couple of videos ago, and not only were they almost all not met, but things are even worse than I thought. Let's get into it. Now, I'm not going to go over everything here. We're going to go over parts of this. You can pause and read this if you want to, just to get the full picture. I read this. I listened to the earnings. I listened to the Q&A. Let's start with some good. Let's start off with some good. I think that during the Q&A call, Thomas Hyliion and Sherry Baker, the CEO and CFO, they sounded very confident. Like, compared to their first conference calls, they sounded a lot more charismatic. They answered the questions that were taken with, I think, with a lot of drive, with a lot of focus, with a lot of assertiveness. And they sounded like they knew what they were talking about, which I really respect. They announced an expansion to the board of directors, which is one of those, I'm glad to see it. They added Secretary Elaine Chow and Mary Gustansky. Hopefully I'm pronouncing those names correctly. They also secured a 40-unit reservation for the Hypertruck ERX from Monet Transport, or Moan Transport. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it's one of those. Glad to see it. Now, one thing I do want to point out is there has not been an exchange of money yet, and there may not be for a while. We'll get into that later. The purchase and sale of the 40 Hypertruck ERX units is subject to the execution of a final agreement between Hyliion and, we'll just say, Moan Transport. So, reservation, I guess, is better than nothing. It's one of those, I'm glad to see it, but it's not definitive. They also talked about unveiling the ERX at the ACT Expo, which they got some positive feedback, so that's good news. I'm very happy to see that. Now, let's get to the important stuff. Hypertruck ERX timing update. Now, once again, I'm not going to read all this, but, and if you listen to the earnings, if you read this, you already know what happened. Basically, supply chain issues. Now, one thing I do want to point out before I get into this is that, yeah, this is not Hyliion's fault. I fully understand that. As a matter of fact, I mean, where I work, I understand those supply chain issues, especially with semiconductors. Like, where I work, if I want to order a Cisco switch, it takes 6 months for Cisco to send that switch to me, for me to get it. So I fully understand these long lead times. I sympathize. But anyways, the supply chain challenges have caused delays to the ERX. So there will not be an end to commercialization in 2022. As a matter of fact, it may not even be 2023. Now, to give a sort of a graphical look at this from their PDF, we're talking first half of 2022 is when they start the on-road testing. The second half of 2022, notice they're still testing, and they start deploying vehicles into controlled fleet operations. Notice we have not talked about an exchange of revenue, a recognizing revenue, or anything like that, because they still have to follow that by product validation, certification, and start of production. Notice they do not have timelines into that, but that might be 2023. Like, they mentioned 2023 is when that could happen, but that could be, we don't know when. Could be at the beginning, could be at the end. I mean, by the time all this continues, it could be 2024. Now, they didn't say that, but it could be the 2024. Now, and this is if things go well. This is if there are no more delays at all. Like, this is absolutely terrible. Now, again, this is not Hyliion's fault that this happened. However, I do want to point out something else. Like, Hyliion is not the only company going through these supply shortages. Like I said with Cisco, Cisco has nothing to do with trucks or whatever. But it takes 6 months for a switch to get to me. But one thing I do want to point out is, like I said, there are other companies going through this, and Tesla is one of them, as a matter of fact. And a few earnings calls ago, there was a question on the Q&A to Elon, asking him how they're dealing with these supply chain challenges. And Elon said, one, they foresaw this coming, and they prepared for it, and they mitigated around it. And just take a look at their last quarter's sales and deliveries. Yes, they mitigated it. They smashed their earnings right out of the park. And it seems that for some reason, Hyliion is unable to do that. Now, it might be because Hyliion doesn't have the capital Tesla does. Understandable. It might be because Hyliion is new to this. Maybe because different industries. But the point is that, and this was brought up in one of the Q&A questions in Hyliion's call earlier, is that what it was hinted is that, you know, other companies are sort of working through it and powering through it, and Hyliion doesn't seem to be able to do that, at least not right now. Things could change, they could get better at it, but as of right now, yeah, this is bad news, especially for my thesis. Like, my bullish thesis for the stock was, in 2022, the Hypertruck ERX is going to come out, hybrids commercialize, and then once truck is out and in production, yeah, like I said in the earlier video, Hyliion will own its own future. However, we're talking 2023 as far as secure build slots, and that's not even the end of it. There's still verification, like I said, more testing, and then accumulation of miles, production. Like, there's still a lot more than that. And so we don't know exactly when the ERX is supposed to fully come out. We don't have a hard date. As far as we know, is probably 2023. Now, if that was the end of the bad news, I wouldn't have sold most of my shares of Hyliion. However, it's this right here which sort of pulled the trigger for me. In addition to some other news, which we'll get to after this. This relates to their hybrid EX launch and their sales update. So for starters, they launched their hybrid. That's what we already knew, which is fine. A lighter solution, easier to install. Like, I have no problems with their products themselves. Like I said in previous videos, their products themselves, from what I read, are absolutely amazing. Now, they recently delivered their first hybrid EX system to Werner Enterprises, and it was this quarter. I think it was October of this quarter. So, for last quarter, just to keep track, they sold one hybrid. Now, they did say in an earlier news article, like a few months ago, that they had other orders that were expected to ship out. However, due to shortages of various components caused by global supply chain disruptions, but like I said, not Hyliion's fault, but this does affect the business. Hyliion is experiencing longer delivery times to customers, which will cause some of Hyliion's deliveries to be delayed until 2022. That's even worse. And we're going to talk about my thoughts after this. And then this is the part. This is the end of it right here. This is the end of it. In addition, the company is assessing the potential demand impact for its hybrid EX product offering in light of recent changes within the competitive landscape. So, I mean, Hyliion would not have added this line if they assumed that customer demand was through the roof and they anticipate fantastic earnings throughout next year. They would not have included that line. Now, they still have to assess it, and we still need to get the impact from that assessment. Now, during the call, I don't remember the company that Hyliion mentioned, but for example, there was a semi vendor that has started the process of including RNG semis, RNG engines, improved RNG engines, which now directly competes with Hyliion's hybrid solution. Because from what I gather, now I could be wrong on this. I'm trying to remember the call, but I think he said that this was a fully RNG semi, which competes with Hyliion's hybrids, which is not fully RNG. It's a hybrid. So right now we're already talking competition directly impacting the company. Now I don't remember the other company. I don't know how big that company's capital is, and you know how much the market share that company has, but we're already talking about demand. So Now they have that to deal with. We have reduced revenue. We don't know how much revenue we're expecting in 2022. Hyliion has not given out that information. We don't even know how... they didn't even give guidance for this year, even though they knew they sold one trunk. They didn't even give guidance. That's bad. That is really bad. So what is the revenue going to look like in 2022? I just don't see it being very good. And in 2023, that's when the commercial, assuming things go right, that's when the ERX starts. Assuming it goes into production, that's when units get delivered. That's the earliest we expect revenue to be recognized on the ERX. That is bad, especially for a smaller, up and coming company. Now, before I go into my thoughts and my shares and my holdings, I do want to talk about their cash on hand. Now, Sherry did mention. Now, it was mentioned in this report, and Sherry did mention on the call that they still have enough liquidity to get through the ERX launch. Now, that, of course, is assuming it doesn't get delayed even more, but they said they have enough liquidity. Now, let me scroll up so you can see the dates. They went from 389.7 million as of the end of last year to 289.4 million in cash. Just cash. We're not talking about investments. But if you want to talk about investments, I mean, it's still not much better. So they do have cash on hand to get through this. I believe them. But that cash is going down. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm not confident that revenue is going to catch up. I'm not confident at all. Like, I'm not sold. I'm just not. I could be wrong. I'm not an expert in the trucking industry, and I'm not a business owner, but I'm not sold on that. So, honestly, I really wanted this to be a positive video. I really wanted to see Hyliion, start to turn around, because in the news, it sounded like they were doing it. Like, they were hitting some of the milestones. Obviously not the important ones, but they were hitting milestones, and they are doing, in my opinion, doing what they can. I guess I could be wrong, but they are doing what they can despite the supply chain issues with they aren't there. It's not their fault. However, I do have to think about this as an investor. It's my money going into this, and the business model keeps changing, and delays keep happening. And this is not I'm not convinced the revenue is going to catch up in time. Now, you might be thinking that I'm just being short-sighted here, but I don't think I am. That's the problem. I'm looking ahead, and that is the problem. For example, let's take the year 2022. What's the main driver that's going to, make me excited for this product? What is it? Right now, Hyliion is starting out 2022 with direct competition now. They actually have to evaluate the impact of, this competition and how it's going to affect their revenue. They don't have any guidance for this year, even though they're only 1 month away from the year. Unless they surprise us, there might be one truck sold in 2021. The ERX, if we're lucky, it'll be 2023 before they get to production. And we don't even know first half, second half, we don't know that. So we're talking 2023 before they start recognizing revenue in the hybrids. We'll just keep it very optimistic. Yeah, they have cash on hand, but that also assumes that they come out of the gate swinging, and there is massive customer interest and all that stuff, and they don't go to other vendors. I just lost a bit of hope. Just to show you I wasn't lying, I started off this morning with 400, and now I have 50. Now, why do I have these 50 shares left? I don't know. Maybe I'm just stupid. Maybe I'm holding on to some vain hope that Hyliion, turns around in the future. Maybe, I don't know. Like I said, it could just be me being stupid. I'm looking hard at Equestive. If Palantir drops below $20, I may sell out of the rest of my Hyliion shares and go into Palantir. So I am not 100% sure that I'm going to be holding one of these shares. But for the time being, as of this video, I will try to keep a hold of these 50 shares. Just as some sort of vain measure of hope. Now, one thing I do want to point out real quick is that, yes, I did sell Hyliion at a loss, and at a fairly decent loss, too. But, I took profits in other places elsewhere this year, especially Cloudera. So, this is going to help with the taxes. And plus, I have plenty of stocks in which I'm making my money. So, I don't feel too bad over, 9 times out of 10. You know what I mean? Now, despite me saying all this, I don't really blame Hyliion for most of it. I mean, I'm the one who decided to invest in the company in the first place, so, you know, I need to own that as my mistake. And it might be my mistake selling, but I think it was, looking back, and the reason why I bought it and stuff, looking back at my older videos, yeah, you know what, it was probably a mistake. I have more Hyliion videos planned. As a matter of fact, I think I have some planned for next week. So look forward to that. But anyways, take care, have a great day, and eat your vegetables.